move on to a very important story, and we've been covering this for a while now. When elections come around, one of very popular things to say, and we've seen this in an assembly elections time and again, is that if we come to power, we will reserve jobs in the private sector for you. Several states have announced it. Several states have said they will do it. One of them now, Haryana, has actually notified the rules. Now, this is a promise which was in Dushyant Chautala, the JGP chief, and who's now the deputy chief minister, in his manifesto, that 75% of jobs in the private sector would be reserved for locals if he came to power for 10 years. He has now formed a government with the BJP. 6 months ago, it was passed in the assembly of the state, and now it has been notified by the governor of the state as well. So what it essentially means that in jobs which pay 50,000 rupees or less per month, 75% of these jobs have to be reserved for locals. Locals being defined as anyone who's lived in the state for over 15 years. Now, what does this mean for industry? What does this mean for a place like Gurugram, which in the past couple of decades has turned into a hub for fintech companies, for IT companies, for large conglomerates, for MNCs, your Coca-Cola, Apple, Samsung, everyone is in Gurugram. They will have to adhere to this as well. Does it really make sense to do that? And at the end of the day, does it actually increase employment? And that's really the big question. If you look at the latest data from CMIE, Haryana has one of the worst track records in unemployment. Unemployment as high as nearly 26%, worse than all of the other states. So is eating into those coveted private sector jobs the way to go about it? Now, to speak on this, I'm joined today by Rituparna Chakraborty, co-founder of Teamlease, Vinnie Mehta, DG of ACMA, joining us on the show, as is Lalit Agarwal, CMD of V-Mart. Welcome to all of you. Let me start with you, Mr. Agarwal. As a business owner, what does this proposition sound like to you? And of course, today we're talking in the context of Haryana, but this is something that many states say they want to do, because it seems like a very populist move to say that vote for me and I will ensure that you get a job in a private company.
Good evening, Tamanna, and very, very difficult subject to react on. But yes, this is a reality of life. Entrepreneurs, business leaders like us has to face all these issues. But definitely it's not a motivating news. It's not a great news for business owners. And any kind of restrictions, any kind of foundations, any kind of reservations doesn't act in favor of employment. It is actually acting in non-favor of employment generation, because entrepreneurs and business owners would never want to be in that kind of situation where they may have to give priority to incapable or incompetent people over competent people. So the reservation means compromising on their competency, compromising on clarity on what kind of people you want to keep. So this is something uninviting and is definitely not going to help the business owners and the businessmen in the forward. So government has to come up and understand, the central has to understand that the existing government of the center, the same party, is bringing in such a policy which may not promote liberalization, which may not promote business investments and ownership. So I think this needs to be really looked at, and especially if you are trying to reserve it at to 75%, which is local domicile, this is going to be really tough for us in this age.
Mr. Agarwal, I just want to clarify something that you said in your comments, and I think this is an important distinction to make. Nowhere are we saying that reservation means incompetent people are hired, or those with less competency are hired, or those who are locals are less capable. So we are not saying that. I don't think the rule says that hire people who don't have capability. And this is a very important distinction to make whenever we're talking on the subject of reservation in any context. Yeah.
But I understand that the rule doesn't say that.
I think it would be a little unfair to imply. I think it would be a little unfair to imply that if that reservation automatically means less competent people would be hired. It's about a choice at the end of the day, where you don't look at this criteria so far, but will now have to look at this criteria while making a hiring choice?
No, Tamanna, I really don't agree with you. In certain manner, reservation does mean giving priority and giving biasness to a certain community or a certain personality or certain caste or certain domicile. Whenever you want to give certain preferences, you need to have certain basis on giving preferences, and you can't have equality when you are trying to give preferences. I do understand there is a provision that when you have people whom we are not finding of similar capability, you could go back to the authorities and ask for the relief there. But that's just one more procedural work which one has to do before getting the employer recruit someone which they want to.
Okay. Rituparna, I want to come to you on this, and again, for our viewers who are watching, I want to qualify what we are talking about. Nowhere at any point are we saying that people from a certain state or people from a certain section are inherently, less capable. I don't think anyone's making that point. The question is, should you impose that choice, and does it really fulfill the end aim, the end goal that you are stating, which is to give more jobs?
Yeah, I think for me, I am absolutely shocked, to say the least, by which Haryana government has committed what I call economic suicide by passing this particular rule. And I know, and I think it's proven the old adage that good politics is never going to be, it's always going to be bad for economics. So I think the point that I think we need to highlight here, that this move goes against the basic principle of meritocracy that acts as the foundation for business to grow and remain competitive. Now, such protectionism, when clearly there are encouraging signs of economic recovery, not only scares employers, and if that scares employers, it's actually going to cost the state the much needed jobs, whether it's now or 10 years from now. And the fact, I think it's important for the state government to realize that about 2 decades back, Haryana was an economic wasteland, and these large multinationals, a lot of software companies and tech companies actually decided to come down on that state, and especially Gurugram, and it changed thereon the economics of that state. Today's scenario is such that it won't take organizations and employers too much time, and with technology, and pandemic has shown us the way, for some of these organizations to move base, by the way. They will either switch states, they will go to the Delhi, they will go to Noida, they will go to Rajasthan. I mean, Bhiwadi, Gurgaon, there is hardly much of a distance. And is it really going to help the youth, locally or the ones outside? And I really would urge the people who are in the position of power to kind of consider this move. I know that it's been passed in the bill, but honestly, the focus should be about creating incentives for employers for more job creations rather than disincentives. And this move clearly will go in that direction. You're right, Tamanna. You're right that organization will still have a choice, but the choice is against a fact, the reality that 75% of the jobs have to be given to locals. Now, the point is that, yes, while they're explicitly not calling out that you're expected to compromise on skills, but for 75% of my jobs, if I'm not finding the right skills, if I have to go and knock on the doors of the government and seek approvals, we need agility in today's time. We really do not have time for following such processes. And so what happens to organizations? And the reality is there are many MSMEs, there are many businesses, Haryana, who are not able to find the people from the local youth, whether it's during the pandemic or prior to the pandemic. And the pandemic is here today, it's a reality, but then life will move on, life will go on.
I have even a bigger concern. No, Rituparna, you're right, but I have a bigger grouse with this sort of regionalism. The constitution of this country gives every Indian citizen a right to stay, seek work and live in any part of this country. So it's just unfair. is just unfair on those grounds, is wrong on those grounds. Let me come to Vinnie Mehta. Please come in on this debate, and what do you think of this rule and this kind of tendency that governments have to really pass these populist rules which will in the end harm the people they're passed for?
Tamanna, thank you for having me on the show. And I couldn't agree with all three of you, if I may say so. And I think when we look at I come from the automotive, more specifically the auto component sector. And for a state like Haryana, the automotive industry accounts for literally 27% of their GDP. We create employment, 10 lakh people. That's the employment that we generate. We have 5 big OEMs in the state, multinationals, okay, including Indian multinationals, and you have 600 plus auto component, and there are very many in the unorganized sector. So we are, in some sense, a very vibrant hub of the automotive industry in this particular state. And moves such as this are indeed disheartening, very, very restrictive. And as you said, it goes against this ethos of one country, one labor market. Somewhere, I sometimes feel that, for political gains or political compulsions, such statements and moves are done. But how much, in effect, will they be able to drive this is an issue. And then it leads to such a huge bureaucratic tangle for the industry to deal with. You go from pillar to post. And honestly, look at us. We are a very globally competitive industry today. The component sector exports 25% of its produced. We would like to export more out of here. And that essentially means we are integral to the global supply chain. We need global quality of talent. And and it's not, by choice that we are discriminating. We want good people, okay? And maybe this state hasn't focused so far on skilling. I'm not saying that it's alone the state's mandate. The industry is very willing to co-invest with the state, partner with the state to create skilled personnel who we can gainfully employ. We wouldn't need to then hire people from the outside. It's in some sense because of non-availability of a certain skill set, we are forced to then hire people from the outside. But we would definitely encourage, the state to work in terms of helping the industry in their ease of doing business. See, in the last 3 odd years, the state has plummeted from a rank of 3 to a rank of 16. So, the state has to be progressive. And honestly, if states are restrictive, it doesn't go for a particular state. If they are not focusing on ease of doing business, the competition from the neighboring or even other states is very, very high. So the industry then makes a calculative move. Say for the software companies, it's so much more easier because work from home has taught them they can work out of home, whether it is Bangalore or Gurugram, doesn't matter. But for a brick and mortar industry like ours, for future expansion, whether greenfield or a brownfield, there'll surely be a lot of thought that we will go through. We will think through our future investment plans.
Let me put that question to Lalit Agarwal. Would you think twice about investing in a state which has such rules and look elsewhere?
Let me be very fair. I was planning a big investment in Haryana, and it is definitely making me think again on how should I go forward on this, because the large employment that I'm going to generate in Haryana is going to be under 50,000 salaried people. And it's going to be a distribution system, a warehouse system where a lot of people. I definitely don't want to get restricted on this whole piece because there will be swings in the businesses. You will need people temporarily. You will need people permanently. You will have all sorts of affair in the business. We operate out of 19 states. And if we have this problem in one state, it tends to then flow into other states also. And then it becomes a state affair where now Uttar Pradesh starts talking about localization and Bihar starts talking about localization. It is going to be a difficult subject going forward. We do understand that this is something which is definitely benefiting the vote bank or the politicians. But and believe me, I mean, I really feel this is ridiculous, and this is not something which is genuinely going to grow up the demand, and it is definitely going to make me think largely on how do we bring in investment in this kind of environment.
Ritu, just last take from you, that how do you think this is going to change things for those seeking workers, for employers, from their perspective? Will they try and find loopholes around this? And does all of this even make sense in the new work from home era, at least in the industries which can get away with that?
Even trying to figure out loopholes on something like this is an utter waste of time, and sounds absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, it's much better for organizations if you're in a position to shift base. It's much better. I mean, just shift your office from Gurugram to Delhi maybe, or just shift your office to Noida maybe, or like I said, Jaipur, Bhiwadi, and that's it. Your problem gets taken. But I don't know whether that's going to really help the local youth. And hence, I wouldn't actually venture in trying to figure out a loophole and waste time any further on something as insane as this. So I guess people should just make arrangements like what's been sharing. Yes, manufacturing companies will take longer to shift base, but for software companies, e-commerce companies, startups, I don't think it's going to be such a big deal, honestly, to just shift somewhere else. So I think it's important for Haryana government to not treat as the existing corporates as hostages. Honestly,
Ritu,
corporates have options.
But Ritu, it is not so easy for anyone to shift their bases and try to look out for opportunities. It is such a beautiful destination. You really want to promote businesses in this kind of environment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, let me add one more bit of perspective. Let me add one more bit of perspective. Haryana is not the only state saying that they want to do this. Maharashtra wants to introduce a bill to reserve 80% job for locals. They've been talking about it. Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka have passed bills giving 75% reservation for locals. Telangana has offered incentives to provide reservation for locals. Madhya Pradesh has set 70% reservation in private jobs. Now we have to see how many of these states implement it. And in true letter and spirit, will they keep that balance, or will they commit, to quote Rituparna, economic suicide? Well, that's all the time we have at this point. I have to take a very short break, but the India Revival Mission coming up next. Stay tuned.